Hey guys, welcome to the channel if you're new. Welcome back if you're a subscriber. My name's Neil and it's time for my Season 2 recap of Lost. This is not going to be like my Season 1 recap, guys. I'm not going to talk an hour with a ton of prepared top 5 lists. I simply don't have the time to put together a reaction like that today. So this is going to be probably about 20 minutes of me rambling semi-incoherently about Lost, going on all sorts of tangents. So it's basically going to be like my typical preamble and postscript to a reaction, except without the episode to react to in the middle. Great season finale. I don't think I expected any less. We had some real resolution about what would happen if you don't press the button, if you don't enter the code. We finish with a great little cliffhanger that opens up a whole new world of possibility to the viewer for Season 3. A ton for us to speculate about and anticipate for the upcoming season. Really, so much of this season and Lost in general is about faith and trust. It's about faith versus science. It's about logic versus belief, and really some of the conversations between Desmond and Locke in the hatch in that last episode really sort of brought so much of that to a head. You know, do you really, Desmond has this epiphany that it does matter, that entering the code does matter, and it's when he discovers that the moment the system failure occurred was the exact same moment that Flight 815 crashed. Or at least it appears to be on that paperwork. We don't know for sure. Maybe that file was left there. See, here's what we've also learned in the last handful of episodes of Season 2, and this makes it so hard to analyze anything that we've learned. When it comes to the Dharma Initiative, we can trust nothing. We discovered a new hatch, the Pearl, and it feels like it's an observation post. It's what drives John away from the numbers, away from the entering the code at the Swan. He believes he's been a victim of a psychological experiment, and what they're doing actually means nothing, all because of the discovery of the Pearl. But when Jack and Kate and Sawyer and Hurley, when being led by Michael, discover the field full of these pneumatic canisters with notebooks full of recordings just sitting out in the field, clearly never sent to headquarters, clearly never used as part of a study, it becomes clear that the observation post at the Pearl was in fact an experiment of its own. We compare and contrast the two orientation videos, both copyright 1980. The scientist, played by the same actor, identifies himself in two different ways. In the Swan video, he calls himself Dr. Marvin Candle, I believe, and then in the Pearl video, he identifies himself as Dr. Mark Wickman. So from Candle to Wick, from Marvin to Mark, and also he appears to be missing an arm in one of these videos. Appears to be, and that's the other thing. Like, if my assumption that the others are in fact the Dharma Initiative, employees of the Dharma Initiative operatives, then they too put on disguises, when they put on these raggedy clothes, when they put on fake beards, when they populate this little tent village on the north side of the island that Michael was held captive in, with the fake hatch there, the hatch that has the door logo, and it's just a facade. It's literally nothing but a door. We can't trust the Dharma Initiative in anything it says. So is the Dharma Initiative nothing but lies? No, because clearly, based on the final moments of episode 24, not entering the code does seem to trigger a massive magnetic overload of some sort, where metal objects go flying within the hatch, and outside on the island there's this massive flash and weird sound. And does the island become a massive magnet, for lack of a better word? And is that what pulled the airplane of Flight 815 to crash, pulled it out of the sky? Is that how other survivors have arrived in the past? Just a ton of questions, really. What else have we learned in these last few episodes? The man calling himself Henry Gale, we know that's not his real name, appears to be the leader of the others, or at least a high up, and the highest ranking member we've met so far. In my last reaction, I called him a bit of a Kaiser Soze figure. Kevin Spacey played the hapless lackey, but he was really the kingpin, and I have a funny feeling that Henry Gale, whatever his real name is, fills a similar role. We're also learning quickly the names and more about a lot of the others. You know, we've gotten to know Alex a little bit. Obviously, Ethan and Goodwin, they've both died in season 1 and early in season 2. There's a guy named Pickett. There's the guy I've been calling Zeke, that a lot of the fans call Mr. Smiley. We find out his real name is Tom. And there's also a strong female character who introduced herself as Miss Clue, but it appears that her name is Bee. Although, again, I question how real those names are, Tom and Bee. They made they were written as if they were accidental slip-ups, but I also don't feel like the others necessarily have accidental slip-ups. It feels like everything is scripted, everything is planned, and perhaps that slip-up was in fact intentional. Anyway, Zeke is now Tom, and Tom is an interesting name. Tangent, sorry, but hang on here, guys. This isn't the first time we've used the name Tom in Lost. The first time we met a Tom, it was Kate's old high school boyfriend from Indiana. And then we met another Tom when Ana Lucia decided that should be Christian's pseudonym for their getaway to Sydney. So why does the name Tom keep popping up? Similarly, Sarah's popped up at least twice when Tom decided that Ana Lucia should be a Sarah. That's a weird one, especially since his son has recently married and then, I guess at that point in the story, divorced a Sarah. So, anyway, we have multiple Sarahs, we have multiple Toms. Depending on the etymology of names, we could say that Jack and John and James are all derived from the same name. Anyway. Many things to think about. Okay, let's talk about the map on the inside of the blast door in the hatch, the one that was painted in blacklight ink. I'm convinced it is a map upon study of that freeze frame. And if it is a map, it's interesting because it's in the shape of the I Ching. It's in the shape of the Dharma Initiative logo. And there are hatches that don't necessarily correspond with each side of the octagon that we've sort of gotten to know. But they do, some fit on edges, some fit on vertices. We sort of know the orientation of these hatches now. So down at the bottom of the octagon is the swan, what we call the hatch. And it's a big complex. There's some tunnels leading off of it. Some look like those tunnels have collapsed. There are facilities called CV1 and CV2. CV2 is just to the southeast of Swan, and it's got a little note that says inactive since accident, which we presume is the accident back from the 70s. Was the accident that happened back in the 70s the same thing that just happened at the very end of episode 24? What I've sort of been calling the event. Is the event the accident? Are they the same things, or was the accident from the 70s something else entirely, and yet presumably related to the strange magnetism of the island? Okay, let's get back to the map. So we have the swan, and then at sort of 1 o'clock, that's where the arrow is. So that's at the vertex of the fire and earth symbols. And then the staff, we know that is at sort of 10 o'clock at the vertex of lake and mountain. I'm not sure what those mean yet. The question mark, which turned out to be the pearl, obviously that's smack dab in the middle. And then at 11 o'clock at the vertex of lake and fire, there is what appears to be a hatch fully crossed out. So either they thought there was one there and it turns out there wasn't, so that could be the door, or it could be something else, maybe one that was destroyed perhaps back in the accident. There are 2 more facilities sort of at 2:30 and 3:30 on either between earth and wind, and then wind and heaven, that are illegible. You can't tell what those are. But the fascinating one to me is at 8 o'clock on that map, at the vertex of thunder and mountain. There's a symbol that looks kind of like a flame, and the name underneath it, you can make out THE, the, and then FLA, and then it's kind of smudged. So I think there is another hatch to be discovered called the Flame, and it's between the staff and the swan. So do we get to find that in season 3? That would be cool. I was going back and forth about whether entering the code mattered, whether it was actually doing anything. And I think that was the whole point. The writers always sort of kept us guessing about whether it was actually doing anything, whether it was an experiment. They asked that question right from the beginning, but way back when Locke found Desmond in the hatch back at the start of season 2. Or maybe Jack asked Desmond, I think, actually. It's like, didn't you ever think that that it was doing nothing at all? And Desmond says, every damn day, brother. So yeah, it's supposed to be on our minds that maybe this isn't actually doing anything and they're just puppets listening to a spliced film from 1980. But then when Henry Gale gets involved, and again, we were guessing about him the whole time too, even though we knew he had to be bad, they continually sowed those seeds of doubt that made us question whether, but what if he is just a balloonist from Minnesota? What if? And I think that same sort of doubt has been niggling at in the back of our brains all season as far as the numbers and the button. What if it means nothing? What if this is all just an elaborate experiment? I'm still not sure, even though it does certainly appear that this is what's happened. Remember when Locke had his leg trapped under the blast door and the alarm's going and he's shouting at Henry to climb through the air vent and enter the code? And the timing of it still never felt right to me. Like, it never felt like Henry had enough time to do what Locke was asking of him. And then the alarm went away. It went away. And I thought, there's no way Henry made it in time. So maybe it just reset on its own. Maybe it had something to do with the supply drop. And Henry tells Locke that he never, an episode or two later, Henry tells Locke that he never pressed the button, trying to, like, press Locke's buttons, for lack of a better word. And I have a theory about why. I think it's because Henry wanted the hatch destroyed. And he was basically trying to make Locke believe that the numbers don't matter, the code doesn't matter, hitting the button doesn't matter. If he could create that seed of doubt in Locke's mind, then perhaps that critical mass of magnetism could occur, and the hatch might be destroyed. And I think that's why Henry kept Locke alive during the episode called Lockdown, to sow that seed of doubt. Yeah, to make Locke question his faith. But what that tells me, because we've now seen what truly happens when the code isn't entered. We saw it in Desmond's flashback: system error, system failure, over and over and over again, and that the extreme magnetism, metal objects flying, and that didn't happen during lockdown. So does that mean that Henry did manage to scurry through the air duct, drop 15 feet to the floor, enter the code, go back the way he came, and reappear in the supply room? It doesn't sound right, but that must have been what happened. Somehow that'll be explained to me, but right now that's sitting weird with me, and I don't know if it's supposed to, or whether I'm pulling at a thread that isn't meant to be pulled. And we leave this season off at a very interesting point now, don't we, guys? Because presumably the hatch is destroyed, because Desmond turned the key and ended it all. Desmond is presumably dead. We know Charlie got out, but we don't know about Echo. We don't know about Locke. I am sure that Locke isn't dead just because he's Locke and this is Lost. But did Echo survive? Is Bernard the only surviving Taily at this point? Other than perhaps Cindy? She was taken by the others, wasn't she? I'm hoping we have more Echo, because I think he's a very interesting counterpoint to Locke, and the two of them are the potential for really interesting philosophical discussion between the two of them feels unending. That could carry on for seasons. That constant back and forth about faith and trust and the need for evidence and everything else. So Desmond is dead, as far as we know. We lost Ana Lucia and Libby in Two for the Road, just a few episodes back. It felt sudden, especially in Libby's case. I've certainly heard through the comments the stories about why those characters may have had their storylines ended prematurely. I'm not sure if I put complete faith in that, just because I've spent 20 years in the film and television industry, and if characters are a hit with the fans, 99 times out of 100, a show will tolerate misbehavior. I don't doubt that Michelle Rodriguez only had a 1-year contract, and that they may or may not have renewed it. You know, and that probably would have been a joint decision between her and the writers. And one or both parties chose not to renew it, and therefore she was killed off. And that's a shame in itself, because I really appreciated Ana Lucia's character. I know she may not have been a massive fan favorite, but I thought she was a very interesting character, and I especially liked her once we really saw the Taylee's backstory, the first 48 days from the Taylee's perspective. What an amazing episode that was, and that was all, in my mind, a character study of Ana Lucia. And she had a very complicated, difficult backstory that I thought really had potential to be explored further. Nevertheless, I felt her death was earned. But Libby's felt so random, and it felt so out of left field. And I'm sure, you guys are Losties. You've discussed this for 17 years in the message boards and in the forums. And yes, certainly she had a DUI in Hawaii, and that may have triggered a firing. But it felt like there must be something else to it. And what that something else is, I have no idea. It could be anything. But that character was not fully explored. They were setting up something very interesting with her backstory. She was a patient in Hurley's facility, and I was so curious about her. So what a shame that we lost her too soon. And then we get teased that she was the source of Desmond's sailboat too. She's the Elizabeth from Newport Beach. That boat was named after. So yeah, it was a real shame that we lost her. And I wonder, have we lost Walt and Michael? Obviously, Michael's deal with the devil, the others, worked out. He delivered the names on the list, and he got Walt and the boat in return, and they are leaving, and maybe we'll never see them again. But I have a funny feeling that boat is going to come back just like Desmond's boat did. If the whole island is a magnetic anomaly, it's going to mess with compasses. We've seen evidence of that since season 1. It would explain why Desmond, who thought he was going due west for 2.5 weeks, might not have been. Maybe he in fact did a big loop without even knowing it because his compass was so screwy. And maybe the same thing will happen to Michael and Walt on their travels. Maybe we'll see them again, or maybe they found a way out. Maybe they're going to be rescued. Maybe we'll never see them again. Maybe that question will linger for a season or two before we ever find out what happens to them. But where are we for episode 1 of season 3? Jack, Kate, and Sawyer are being held prisoner by the others. Hurley's got a solo mission to return to Survivorville on his own from the north side of the island. Echo and Locke may or may not have survived the explosion of the hatch, and we've lost the hatch. So there's a lot of balls up in the air right now, guys. And then there's this great little tease in the last minute or two of episode 24, where we find Penny, Desmond's ex-girlfriend, still girlfriend, sort of future girlfriend, Penny Widmore. She has never given up on Desmond. She apparently has been searching for him ever since his boat went missing 3+ years ago. And for some reason, she's monitoring magnetic anomalies, or funding the monitoring of magnetic anomalies. She's not doing it herself. She's paying a couple of apparently Spanish dudes to hang out in a hut in Antarctica and do it for her. But the point being, she may have discovered where the island is. And it's ironic, of course, that discovery was prompted by what amounted to Desmond's suicide when he used the key to self-destruct the hatch, self-destruct Swan. But it, for the first time, makes us think about the outside world post the crash of 815. We've never looked at what's been going on in the real world since the crash. There's been no we've had no idea what kind of rescue effort may have been going on, what kind of search is going on. Has the plane mysteriously disappeared, or is there some sort of simple explanation, at least as the outside world perceives it? But now we finally get a taste of that. Penny Widmore's been leading the search. And does that mean that we're going to somehow make contact with the outside world? You know, we've had brief moments on a radio that Sayid patched together, and other than that, we've had nothing. So I'll be curious to see what comes of that new story direction. One last thing I'll talk about is just a few remaining small mysteries that are just kind of niggling in the back of my head. And I've been warned that this show isn't going to answer every single mystery that's raised over the course of 6 seasons. I'm understanding of that. It would be impossible to do such a thing unless you happen to have written 100+ episodes of a TV series before ever going to camera and having the full support of a network every step of the way. Anyway, a few new mysteries that you sort of have to think about. There's this CGI bird that's made 2 appearances. It made an appearance in episode 123, episode 23 of season 1, the first part of that 3-part season finale, when our team was heading towards the Black Rock. And it appeared again in episode 223, the first half of this season finale, and it sort of triggered Michael's discovery that the gun he had no bullets. What does this bird mean? What's this bird about? It doesn't appear often. It just sort of seems to be an exotic, mythological almost bird. Is it is it meant to be a phoenix or something similar? I'm not sure, but it's not meant to feel real right now, or at least that's the level of the CGI. But I don't feel like it feels surreal both times we've seen it. I have no idea what that's about. Maybe one day we'll get an answer. Super random, throwaway, weird thing when Sayid and Sun and Jin are sailing around to the north side of the island. They discover the remnants of a giant statue on the shore. And it's a massive foot with 4 toes. It feels like it's all that remains of a towering statue, something perhaps like the Colossus of Rhodes, or that giant statue that bridges the entry to the harbor in Braavos in Game of Thrones, something like that. But the 4 toes is just such a whack, like that's just the writers messing with the viewers' heads on purpose. They're like, we could just make them think that there maybe was an ancient civilization here, or we could make them think it could be anything. Could it be aliens? Could it be, like, we're talking a different species at this point? And then how old is it? Or how, like, it just raises so many freaking questions. And, like, does it go anywhere? Or is it just a throwaway? I don't know. But it makes no sense to just sort of, like, drop that, halfway through the season finale, never mention it again. What'll become of that? And, ultimately, we also have to figure out the Dharma Initiative is still in operation. We know that because we're getting food drops. We know that because we have Claire's flashbacks when she was in the staff station. Although, because Claire was so drugged up, it does bring up the issue of the unreliable narrator. We're so used when we consume our media, whether it's television or movies or books or video games, that what we're being told by the narrator, by the first person, is truth. Like, that's what we have to trust, the story that we're being told. And yet, we know Claire was drugged up. Can we trust that everything that we saw in her flashbacks is real? Maybe she misperceived some of that. Maybe it happened quite differently. But we're getting into layers. We're getting into a rushing nesting doll of trust here, because we also, as viewers, have to trust the writers of the show that they are giving us enough information to follow the story. Like, the last thing you want to do is lose your audience because things don't make sense. So yes, you can cast doubt, you can create puzzles, but if you don't pull it back together and create some intellectual closure to all these questions that you're forcing your audience to ask, then your audience will grow tired and walk away. And the fact that there's still a huge Losty community 17 years later tells me that I should be able to trust the writers of Lost, and therefore probably trust what they're showing us in Claire's flashbacks, probably, but maybe not. I love where this show is going, but in a lot of ways, I feel like season 2 was very much a foundational season. Season 1 was introduction, and just sort of laying a very basic groundwork, teaching us about all these characters, giving us the basic mysteries of the island. But then season 2 sort of like ripped the lid off the present and said, look at all this crazy stuff inside. You don't get to play with it yet. We're going to make you read the instructions first. And so I feel like we've sort of been taught, okay, the island heals. The island is a magnetic anomaly. Let's learn more about the others. It's all been set up though. Like there hasn't been a ton of resolution. We've introduced a few new characters, and they've had some really interesting backstories. I really love Echo's whole story, and like I said before, Ana Lucia's was really interesting. We never got Libby's except for that little cameo in Hurley's, and what a great backstory we got when Rose and Bernard met in SOS. What a lovely episode that was. But I feel like big things are about to happen. I feel like we're about to turn a corner here, and all that setup from season 2 is going to turn into payoff in seasons 3 and 4. I might be wrong. Maybe it's more wishful thinking than rational, logical extrapolation. But I am so psyched for season 3, guys. I'm really psyched for season 3. We bit off a big chunk of this show already, guys. We're 2 full seasons down, nearly 50 episodes, and wild horses couldn't pull me away from the show at this point. I have to keep going. I have to keep reacting to this show for you guys. I love reacting to this show. I love thinking about it. I was not looking forward to doing this recap right now because like I said, I didn't have the time to really do an in-depth preparation. This is me talking mostly off the top of my head. You can see my awkward pauses. You've witnessed my weird tangents. But what me talking about this show does is it helps me crystallize my thoughts about the show. I'm not 100% certain about anything in this show. Let's put it that way. 80% of the time, I'm 80% sure. But that means a big chunk of the time, I am in real doubt about what's going on. And I know that that's intentional on the part of the writers and the producers. They've done such a good job of making us question everything, just like the characters on the show are doing. They're questioning so much about what they thought they knew about the world and how it worked. And they're discovering that in this particular place, at this particular time, the world doesn't work the way they thought it did, and I find that fascinating. That's some heavy thinking, That's not stuff that television normally tackles. So I love that in a real way is the heart of the show, is really questioning our core beliefs in our in ourselves and in the world around us. Nothing has to be what we assume it is. I could ramble for another 10-15 minutes, but I honestly feel like it would be pure rambling at this point. I feel like I've sort of said my piece. I loved season 2. I'm psyched for season 3. Thanks to all of you who followed me along from the beginning. I adore your support, your comments. It's such a cool community to be part of now, and I look forward to you guys following me for the remainder of the series. So until episode 1 of season 3, take care, stay healthy, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.